There we go.
Good afternoon and welcome to our company narrative presentation. My classmates and I have selected Meta as our presentation with the focus on content restrictions. Our group includes Carlos, Nikita, Summer, Sam, and Andy, each focusing on a different constraint of Meta. First, we're going to have Andy discuss the story of Meta, followed by the challenges and key issues. After that, we'll have Carlos and Summer follow with content restrictions. Carlos is going to focus on the user, and politics will be highlighted by Summer. The content restrictions and shareholders will be by Nikita, and I'll follow with the communication objectives.
So the story of Meta, our mission is to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together. Meta does this by building technologies that help people connect, find communities, and grow businesses. Through Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, we empower more than 3 billion people around the world to share ideas and offer support. Since 2016, we've used a strategy called Remove, Reduce, Inform to manage content across all Meta technologies. Remove harmful content that goes against our policies, reduce the distribution of problematic content that doesn't violate our policies, and inform people with additional context so they can decide what to click, read, or share. We keep people safe and let people hold us accountable by sharing our policies, our enforcement, and our transparency reports. In addition, in 2020, Meta created the Oversight Board, which is a group of outside experts and civic leaders who exercise independent judgment over some of the most difficult and significant content decisions on Facebook and Instagram. Externally, some of the narratives and challenges that we face is the worldviews our unsuccessful pivot to the metaverse didn't really fulfill itself like we thought. Content is still driving revenue, which is up due to our ad sales increase associated with that content over the last year. We do have an active Federal Trade Commission antitrust case accusing us of monopolization of social media in the US. We've also seen in the last few years record fines in Europe regarding data privacy regulations. There was a recent news leak about introducing paid ad-free subscriptions to Facebook to meet EU requirements. And we're also in the process of dropping the News tab feature in several large European countries in order to avoid revenue sharing with some of those news platforms that we get that content from. We did recently see the largest takedown of a misinformation campaign by the Chinese government, which was very successful to eliminate some of that misinformation. So the issue that we've decided to focus on is content governance. It's in the best interest of Meta and our shareholders to ensure long-term profitability. Obviously, ad revenues would decline if content is seen as too controversial. You can look at Twitter very recently for a good example of revenue declining with ad revenue. Governments obviously have an interest in fair elections and also are concerned about public health and public safety. Users have more options than ever before. They could easily find another platform. Things are very volatile right now with some of the new players and some of the other players that are changing. We know that viral posts and controversial posts can drive engagement and therefore usage, but we also know that that's a really big balance to what's good for society at large. We've seen the administration of our policies is very inconsistent across regions, especially in the developing world, where a majority of our new users are coming from. And there's also been a lot of controversy about our cross-check system, which leaves content moderation kind of a little bit of a step back for celebrities and public figures and other people that we want to give a little bit more free will to post content for themselves. The Oversight Board is doing what it should be doing, and they're continuing to identify opportunities where we need to either create policies or further define some situations that we should be aware of. Here you see just an overall graph of a lot of the issues that we have facing us. And you can see that content governance is the most critical for our business, but also very high on the importance to our stakeholders overall. And the next section, Carlos is going to cover that first stakeholder, which is our users.
Thank you, Andy. We've identified that a key stakeholder that is affected by this issue is the everyday user and Meta platforms. According to a Pew Research poll conducted in 2020, roughly 36% of US adults rely on Facebook for their news. An additional 11% and 3% get news from Instagram and WhatsApp, respectively. Both of these platforms are owned by Meta. Moving forward, Meta's been inconsistent with their transparency. According to a 2023 Wired article by Victoria Elliott, Meta's advertising transparency rules haven't been consistently applied to the content. Despite Meta's requirement on ads that are about social issues, which states, advertisers must include a verified paid-for-by disclaimer on these ads to show the entity or person responsible for running the ad across Meta technologies. However, Elliott notes that PragerU Kids, which is a nonprofit media organization known for pushing conservative views, failed to provide this disclaimer. And it shows that political organizations can still push their views without disclosing any of their motives or funding information on the content. This can be very detrimental to the user, who may be swayed unknowingly by this content because there is no discretion. Inconsistency with the disclaimers makes Meta look very deceitful, and it presents Meta with a negative image. Furthermore, Meta's third-party content governance intermediaries, also known as fact-checkers, do show signs of bias. As stated in the research article in 2021 by Rodan Mezzini, which analyzes how Facebook's content governance has changed throughout the years, it states, Facebook's third-party intermediaries follow external standards and benefit from autonomy and discretion when implementing content decisions. And Meta's US intermediaries do show signs of bias. For example, Dispatch.com's statement on their homepage says, fact-based reporting and commentary on politics, policy, and culture, informed by conservative principles. The key phrase here is informed by conservative principles, because it shows a sign that they do support conservative views in politics, and this can be problematic because their bias could potentially seep into their fact-checking. Another intermediary is Reuters Fact Check. It states in their trust principles, which obligates Reuters and their employees to act at all times with integrity, independence, and freedom from bias. It states that Thomson Reuters shall pay due regard to the many interests which it serves in addition to those in the media. They're essentially saying that they strive to keep the interests of the organizations they serve. And this is problematic because most of them are very controversial and have a high potential to be biased. These are organizations in the pharmaceutical industry, the government, and marketing and advertising agencies. Additionally, another content governance intermediary is Televisa Univision, which is owned by SoftBank, Google, and Grupo Televisa, according to BusinessWire.com. The fact that third-party intermediaries serve so many controversial interests, and the fact that they have discretion and autonomy on what content goes out and what content gets labeled with a disclaimer, serves to highlight the disconnect between Meta's policies and their practices. The negative effects that they have on many of our users could be very detrimental because they could potentially be influenced without any discretion. These consequences can be very extensive, and my partner Summer will address those in the next section.
So I'm going to be talking about Meta's role in content government as it relates to politics and government. First, I'm going to talk about the voter. It's important for the voter to get information that is true, and also to not be restricted by the information that they're allowed to see, especially around the time of an election. Meta's goal to reduce those is first to reduce misinformation, which refers to allowing users to report and hide content that they do not want to see, and then also to block information that is incorrect. They do this through their review teams. They have technological review teams that are supposed to be able to pick up on any false information. And then they also have human review teams that dig deeper and look into those different types of post advertisements, anything like that that will have any misinformation. They have a goal to fact check anything being posted on Meta. They also fight election interference, as Andy mentioned before about the China interference in the previous election. And then Meta and the candidate refers to how a political candidate can use Meta to further their agenda. So the candidate can use Meta's tools to connect with their community and their constituents. There's an entire section on the Meta website about how to use Reels and other tools that Meta offers for their goals. Another thing that would help Meta also, that would help the candidate by using Meta is voting alerts. So while the candidate is reaching out to their constituents, getting them to see their views, they still need them to get out and vote. So how they can use Meta is the voting alerts that show the users of Meta and show them where they can vote and when to vote. Also, they have tags that show that you did vote, and so they can sway their friends and followers as well to participate. Carlos had already mentioned advertisers in Meta, but particularly social and political advertisements. Meta requires authorization for each advertisement posted on their platforms by a social or political group. They also require that whoever posts advertisements must show their identity and prove who they are with. They must also have a paid for by disclaimer, and then disclaimers that it is a social or political ad. A couple of examples that differ with Meta's goals for their requirements is first PragerU, which Carlos mentioned before. They talk about conservative views. It's important in the government section because the types of things that they cover in their data and advertisements, it can help to sway an election or someone's political views. And so they are, Wired has shown that they are allowing political message without being, the motives being disclosed or letting people know who it's paid for by. The second media news is by the Washington Post about fact checking. They state that they are now allowing users to opt out of fact checking and to instead use a warning label at the end of information that has not been fact checked. The third is also by Washington Post. It talks about the feed algorithm. There was a study after the last election that looked into the feed and the way that it's laid out. Meta uses an algorithm for their feeds instead of it being chronological. They have an entire algorithm to decide what the user is going to see. So in this study, they looked at how the chronological feed may influence someone's views. While they didn't find any difference in political views after these studies, they did see that there was less time spent in the platform if the feed is chronological instead of using that algorithm. That is a couple of examples that I have for government and the content restrictions that Meta uses. And Nikita is up next.
Thanks, Summer. I'll be covering the final stakeholder, which is the shareholders. So Meta is committed to creating shareholder value and mitigating business risks, according to its 2023 report. Shareholders are internal stakeholders, and ultimately they are concerned with the value of Meta stock going up or down and its long-term sustainability. Many shareholders are concerned about the well-being of the users in the Meta community being negatively impacted by harmful content on the platform. Shareholders care about content governance because harmful content poses a risk to the business and to shareholder value. In the past, Meta has faced and testified before Congress in 2021 to address issues of the company's awareness of the issue of harmful content on its platform. Shareholders are taking active measures to bring these issues relating to content governance to the attention of corporate leadership. This year, for example, shareholders submitted proposals to address the issue of content governance during the annual meeting in May. Proposal 10, titled Shareholder Proposal Regarding Report on Enforcement of Community Standards and User Content, was submitted. The board voted against this proposal, stating that they are committed to keeping people safe and having ongoing efforts to address the topic. Overall, it's clear that shareholders as a stakeholder group find the issue of content governance imperative for their continued investment in the company. Now I'll pass it off to Sam to discuss Meta's communication objectives.
Thank you, Nikita. I'll be focusing on the communication objectives as well as recapping all of my classmates' former work. Starting with privacy and security, as everyone has said with corporate governance so far, Facebook's #1 priority is eliminating the spread of misinformation along all platforms. As Andy specifically stated, the remove, reduce, and inform policy is something that Meta tries to help and emphasize and put into place each day. Through those policy standards, they can eliminate all hate threats, excessive violence, and most importantly, misinformation. Next will be global connectivity. In just a few clicks, access is granted to friends, family, pictures, videos, and other content. This is a very good thing, that you can see things that your family members want to post each day. However, it's inappropriate. They're going to highlight it and eliminate it as soon as possible. And for the future, a couple things to intrigue the audience and the stakeholders as well. First, we'll start with virtual reality. It's becoming a lot more common nowadays, starting with Oculus. Oculus is just a VR headset that can simplify jobs and kind of enhance efficiency, see if there's different ways to do things without having the costly analysis of it as well. Next, we'll have artificial intelligence. The artificial intelligence will get rid of that misinformation by filtering content to personalize each post, only show you things that you want to see. Even just the layout, the way you operate inside the app is something that's definitely going to be all up to you. It's going to be all personalized, and advertisements as well are going to be highlighted on things you're looking at, other posts you're liking and interacting with as well. Next, we just have our references. Thank you so much for listening today. You can look through those. Thanks for the engagement. If you have any questions, please comment below. Thank you for your time today.